The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Windsor Castle as King Charles stood in his private study, his weathered hands clasping a letter that had arrived with the dawn post. The royal physician's words echoed in his mind from their conversation the previous evening. Kate's condition had taken another turn, and the prognosis remained uncertain. Charles had always admired his daughter-in-law's strength and grace. From the moment William had brought her home, nervous and radiant, Catherine had won over not just the public but the entire royal family. She possessed a natural warmth that reminded Charles of his beloved mother, Queen Elizabeth, yet carried herself with a modern elegance that spoke to a new generation. Now, as he prepared for what might be one of their final private conversations, Charles felt the weight of unspoken words pressing against his chest. There were things he needed to tell her, gratitude he had never properly expressed, and wisdom he hoped to pass along before time slipped away from them both. The cancer diagnosis had shaken the entire family to its core. William had barely left Kate's side. Their children were struggling to understand why their mother was so tired all the time, and the palace had worked overtime to maintain a sense of normalcy, while the woman who had become the heart of the modern monarchy fought the battle of her life. Charles walked slowly toward the door, pausing to straighten his tie in the antique mirror that had reflected the faces of generations of monarchs. Today felt different, heavy with purpose and tinged with an urgency he couldn't shake. He had requested this private audience with Kate, away from the medical teams and family members who constantly surrounded her. The corridors of the castle seemed longer than usual as he made his way to the sitting room where Kate was waiting. His footsteps echoed against the stone floors, each sound marking another moment in what felt like a countdown. Outside, the grounds were unusually quiet, as if even nature sensed the gravity of the day. Charles paused outside the sitting room door, collecting his thoughts and steadying his emotions. Through the slight gap in the doorway, he could see Kate seated by the window, her profile silhouetted against the morning light. Despite everything she was enduring, she maintained that characteristic poise that had made her such a beloved figure around the world. Taking a deep breath, Charles pushed open the door and stepped inside. Kate turned toward him with a gentle smile, her eyes bright despite the fatigue that had become her constant companion. In that moment, Charles knew that whatever happened next would change everything between them, and perhaps alter the very foundation of the royal family itself. The conversation that was about to unfold would reveal secrets that had been buried for years, reshape relationships within the House of Windsor, and set in motion events that would ultimately force Queen Camilla to confront her own place in the dynasty she had fought so hard to join. Kate rose gracefully from her chair as Charles entered, though he could see the effort it required. The chemotherapy had taken its toll, but her spirit remained unbroken. She moved toward him with arms outstretched, and Charles felt his formal resolve melt away as he embraced his daughter-in-law with genuine affection. "You look tired, Charles," Kate said softly, studying his face with the perceptive eyes that had always seen straight through royal pretense. "You've been carrying too much worry for all of us." Charles guided her back to her seat, pulling up a chair beside her rather than maintaining the formal distance that protocol usually demanded. The informality felt right, necessary even for what he needed to share. "Catherine, there are things I should have told you long ago," Charles began, his voice carrying an unusual vulnerability. "Things about your place in this family, about what you mean to the monarchy, and about decisions I've made that affect us all." Kate tilted her head slightly, encouraging him to continue. The morning light caught the subtle changes in her appearance that the illness had brought, but Charles saw beyond them to the strength that had never wavered. "When William first brought you to meet us, I knew immediately that you were different," Charles continued. "Not just different from what we expected, but different from what we needed. You had something that this family had been missing for generations: authenticity." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I've spent my entire life preparing to be king, following protocols and traditions that sometimes felt more like chains than guidelines. But watching you navigate this world, seeing how you've managed to honor our history while remaining completely yourself, has taught me things about leadership I never learned from any constitutional expert." Kate reached out and placed her hand over his, a gesture that spoke of the genuine bond they had developed over the years. "Charles, you don't need to—" "Yes, I do," he interrupted gently. "Because time is precious and there are decisions to be made. decisions about the future of this monarchy, about what happens when I'm gone, and about ensuring that the institution serves the people rather than the other way around. The weight of his words settled between them. Kate had always been astute about palace politics, but she sensed this conversation was leading somewhere significant, somewhere that would require courage from both of them. Charles stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the grounds where his sons had played as children, where he himself had run as a boy under his mother's watchful eye. The continuity of it all felt both comforting and overwhelming. I've been reconsidering many things, Catherine. The line of succession, the role of the queen consort, the very nature of how this monarchy should evolve. He turned back to face her. And I believe you should know that in my private papers, in my will, and in conversations with my closest advisors, I've made clear my feelings about who should guide this family forward. Kate felt her breath catch. The implications of what Charles seemed to be suggesting were enormous, potentially earth-shattering for everyone involved. What are you saying, Charles? The king returned to his chair, leaning forward with an intensity that made clear this was no casual conversation. I'm saying that when the time comes when the crown passes to William, I want to ensure that you have the support and authority you'll need to help him succeed. And that might require some very difficult conversations with people who won't be pleased with my decisions. 2 floors above, Queen Camilla stood in her private sitting room, her ear pressed against the door that connected to the main corridor. She had not intended to eavesdrop, but Charles's assistant had mentioned his private meeting with Kate, and something in the young man's tone had set off alarm bells in her mind. Camilla had fought too hard and waited too long to secure her position as queen consort to ignore potential threats to her status. The whispered conversations that stopped when she entered rooms, the way certain courtiers seemed to defer more readily to Kate than to her, the subtle shifts in protocol that favored the younger woman, all of it had been building for months. She moved away from the door, her hands trembling slightly, as she poured herself tea from the delicate china, service that had once belonged to Queen Mary. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was using items that had passed through the hands of women who had also navigated the treacherous waters of royal hierarchy. Camilla had always known she was an interim solution, a bridge between the old monarchy and whatever came next, but she had hoped for more time, more opportunities to prove herself worthy of the crown she had finally achieved. The thought that Charles might be planning to diminish her role in favor of Kate filled her with a familiar dread. She thought back to the early days of her relationship with Charles, when every public appearance was scrutinized and criticized. The comparisons to Diana had been brutal and unrelenting. She had endured it all because she believed in their love and in her eventual acceptance by both the family and the public. Now, years later, she found herself facing a different kind of comparison. Kate had achieved in a decade what Camilla had struggled to accomplish in twice that time. The younger woman's natural charisma, her ease with modern media, her ability to connect with people from all walks of life, these were gifts that Camilla had to work much harder to demonstrate. A soft knock at her door interrupted her brooding. Her lady-in-waiting entered with a concerned expression. "Your Majesty, the Princess of Wales has requested a private audience with you this afternoon. She asked if you might join her for tea in the blue drawing room." Camilla felt her stomach tighten. Kate had never requested a private meeting before. Their interactions were always cordial but formal, surrounded by others and governed by protocol. For Kate to seek her out directly, especially after Charles's mysterious meeting, suggested something significant was developing. Did she give any indication of what she wished to discuss? Camilla asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "No, Your Majesty. She simply said it was a matter of some importance and that she hoped you could spare an hour of your time." Camilla nodded, dismissing her aide with a wave of her hand. She walked to her dressing table and studied her reflection in the ornate mirror. At 76, she had learned to see herself clearly, acknowledging both her strengths and limitations. She had never been the fairy tale princess that the public seemed to prefer, but she had brought stability and maturity to Charles's life during his most challenging years. The question now was whether that would be enough to weather whatever storm was brewing. Kate's request for a private meeting, combined with Charles's secretive conversation, suggested that changes were coming whether Camilla was prepared for them or not. She began to prepare herself mentally for the afternoon encounter. knowing that her future role in the royal family might well depend on how she handled whatever Kate was planning to tell her. The game of royal succession was about to become much more complex, and Camilla needed to decide whether she would fight to maintain her position or gracefully step aside for the good of the monarchy. Either way, the conversation with Kate would likely be one of the most important of her life. The blue drawing room felt unusually intimate that afternoon, despite its grand proportions and formal furnishings. Kate had arrived early, using the quiet moments to gather her thoughts and prepare for what might be the most delicate conversation of her royal career. When Camilla entered, Kate was struck by how vulnerable the older woman appeared. Gone was the confident bearing that Camilla usually projected in public. Instead, Kate saw uncertainty in her eyes and a tension in her shoulders that spoke of someone bracing for difficult news. "Thank you for coming." "Camilla," Kate said, gesturing toward the comfortable chairs she had arranged near the fireplace. "I know this was short notice." Camilla settled into her chair with careful composure, accepting the cup of tea that Kate offered. "It's quite all right, Catherine. Though I must admit, I'm curious about what prompted this meeting." Kate took a sip of her tea, using the moment to choose her words carefully. "Charles and I had a conversation this morning about the future of the monarchy, about plans he's been making, and about some decisions that will affect all of us." The color drained slightly from Camilla's face, but she maintained her outward calm. "I see. And he asked you to speak with me about these matters?" "Actually, no," Kate replied honestly. "He doesn't know I'm here. But after our conversation, I realized that certain things needed to be said, and they needed to come from me directly." Camilla set down her teacup with deliberate precision. "Go on." Kate leaned forward slightly, her voice taking on a warmth that surprised them both. "Camilla, I want you to know that I understand what you've sacrificed to be here. I know what it cost you to wait for Charles, to endure the criticism and judgment, to build a life in the shadow of someone else's memory." Camilla's carefully constructed mask began to slip. She had not expected sympathy from Kate, and the genuine emotion in the younger woman's voice caught her off guard. "When I married William, I thought I understood what I was signing up for," Kate continued. "But I learned quickly that this life requires a strength that most people can't imagine. You've shown that strength for decades, often without recognition or appreciation." "Why are you telling me this, Catherine?" Camilla asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kate reached across the small space between their chairs and took Camilla's hand in hers. "Because Charles is planning to make changes that will elevate my role significantly when he passes the crown to William. Changes that might be seen as diminishing your position or your contributions." Camilla closed her eyes briefly, as if absorbing a blow she had been expecting but hoping to avoid. "But I want you to know," Kate continued, "that I don't see it that way. I see an opportunity for us to work together, to create something new that honors both tradition and progress. I need your wisdom, Camilla. This family needs your experience and your perspective." Camilla opened her eyes, studying Kate's face for any sign of deception or manipulation. What she found instead was sincerity, and surprisingly a request for partnership rather than a declaration of rivalry. "What exactly is Charles planning?" Camilla asked. Kate took a deep breath. "He wants to ensure that when William becomes king, I have the full authority and support I'll need as queen consort. He's concerned that without clear documentation of his wishes, there might be challenges to the natural progression of influence and responsibility. And where does that leave me?" "That," Kate said firmly, "is entirely up to you. Charles sees this as necessary for the future stability of the monarchy. But I see it as an opportunity for us to redefine what it means to be royal women in the 21st century." The two women sat in silence for several moments, the weight of unspoken possibilities filling the space between them. Outside, the afternoon sun was beginning to slant through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the ornate carpet. Finally, Camilla spoke. "What are you proposing, Catherine?" Kate smiled, and for the first time since her diagnosis, Camilla saw a glimpse of the formidable woman who had captured not just William's heart but the imagination of an entire nation. "I'm proposing that we stop letting other people define our relationship and start defining it ourselves." Over the following weeks, an unexpected alliance began to form between the two women. Camilla found herself genuinely impressed by Kate's strategic thinking and emotional intelligence, while Kate discovered that Camilla, possessed a depth of institutional knowledge that would be invaluable during the transition periods. Ahead, their first collaborative effort came when they jointly approached Charles about modernizing certain ceremonial protocols. Instead of competing for his attention, they presented a united front that surprised and delighted the king. He began to see how their different strengths could complement each other rather than create division. Charles started including both women in private discussions about the future of the monarchy. During these sessions, Camilla's experience with traditional royal duties balanced perfectly with Kate's insights into contemporary public relations and social media engagement. They discovered they shared similar views on many issues, from the importance of environmental conservation to the need for the royal family to be more accessible to ordinary citizens. However, not everyone in the palace was pleased with this developing partnership. Several long-serving courtiers had built their careers on managing the subtle rivalries between royal women, and they viewed the growing friendship between Kate and Camilla as a threat to their influence. Lord Pemberton, Charles's private secretary for over 2 decades, was particularly concerned. He had witnessed the damage that conflicts between royal women could inflict on the monarchy's reputation, but he had also learned to navigate those conflicts for political advantage. A united front between the future queen and the current queen consort represented uncharted territory. During a private meeting with Charles, Pemberton voiced his concerns carefully. "Your Majesty, while it's encouraging to see harmony between Her Majesty the Queen and the Princess of Wales, I wonder if we should be cautious about concentrating too much influence in their partnership." Charles looked up from the documents he was reviewing, his expression sharpening. "Explain what you mean by that, Pemberton." "Well, sir, historically the monarchy has benefited from a certain balance of perspectives among senior royals. If the Queen and the Princess of Wales become too aligned in their thinking, it might limit the range of advice and viewpoints available to Your Majesty and, eventually, to the Prince of Wales." Charles set down his papers entirely, giving Pemberton his full attention. "Are you suggesting that I should encourage discord between my wife and my daughter-in-law for the sake of administrative convenience?" Pemberton realized he had overstepped. "Not at all, Your Majesty. I simply think we should monitor the situation carefully. What I think, Pemberton, is that you've grown too comfortable with the old ways of doing things. The monarchy my son will inherit needs to be unified, not fractured by internal politics and petty rivalries." Later that evening, Charles shared Pemberton's concerns with both Camilla and Kate during a private dinner. Rather than being offended, both women were amused by the idea that their friendship might be seen as threatening to the established order. "Perhaps," Kate suggested with a mischievous smile, "that's exactly the kind of shake-up this institution needs." Camilla raised her wineglass in agreement. "To shaking things up, then?" Charles found himself genuinely laughing for the first time in weeks. Watching these two remarkable women support each other while maintaining their individual strengths gave him hope for the future of his family and his kingdom. As the evening progressed, they began planning a joint charitable initiative that would combine Camilla's work with literacy programs and Kate's focus on early childhood development. The project would serve as a public demonstration of their partnership while addressing real social needs. But more importantly, they were building something that transcended traditional royal hierarchies. They were creating a new model for how royal women could support each other, rather than compete, how different generations could work together, rather than against each other, and how personal relationships could strengthen rather than undermine institutional stability. The transformation was remarkable to witness, and it was having effects throughout the palace that none of them had anticipated. The public announcement of Kate and Camilla's joint charitable initiative created an unprecedented wave of positive media coverage. Royal correspondents who had spent years speculating about tensions between the two women suddenly found themselves reporting on genuine collaboration and mutual respect. The launch event, held at a primary school in East London, showcased their natural chemistry and shared commitment to education. Cameras captured moments of spontaneous laughter between them, the easy way they finished each other's sentences when speaking to reporters, and the obvious delight they took in each other's company. But perhaps the most telling moment came when a young journalist asked Kate about her health and future plans. Without hesitation, Camilla stepped closer to Kate's side, a subtle but powerful gesture of support that spoke louder than any prepared statement. "The Princess of Wales has shown remarkable strength throughout her treatment," Camilla said, her voice carrying a protective edge that surprised everyone present. "And I have no doubt that she will continue to be a tremendous asset to this family and this nation for many years to come." Behind the scenes, their partnership was having practical effects on palace operations. Joint meetings were more efficient, decisions were reached more quickly, and the traditional power struggles between different royal households began to diminish. Staff members who had grown accustomed to playing favorites or choosing sides found themselves working for a more unified leadership structure. William noticed the change immediately and was deeply moved by it. His wife's illness had been devastating enough without adding family tensions to the burden. Watching his stepmother and his wife develop a genuine friendship provided him with emotional support he hadn't realized he needed. One evening, as he walked with Kate through the gardens at Kensington Palace, he expressed his gratitude for what she had accomplished. "You've changed everything," he told her, stopping beside the rose garden where they had often brought their children to play. "Not just with Camilla, but with the whole family dynamic. Father is happier than I've seen him in years." Kate leaned against him, still feeling the fatigue that came with her ongoing treatment, but drawing strength from his presence. "I realized that we could either spend our energy fighting each other or fighting for the things that really matter. It wasn't a difficult choice. Mother would have been proud of you," William said quietly. She always believed that the royal family worked best when the women supported each other instead of competing. As autumn progressed, Kate's health began to stabilize, and her doctors expressed cautious optimism about her prognosis. The relief throughout the family was palpable, but it also prompted serious conversations about the changes that had occurred during the crisis. Charles found himself facing a decision he hadn't anticipated. The partnership between Kate and Camilla had proven so effective, so beneficial to the monarchy's public image and internal operations, that he began to consider making their collaboration a permanent and formal part of the royal structure. During a private meeting with his constitutional advisors, Charles proposed creating a new role within the royal household that would recognize the unique position of the future queen consort, while preserving Camilla's status and contributions. "What you're suggesting has no historical precedent, Your Majesty," his legal advisor pointed out. "The role of queen consort has always been singular." "Then perhaps it's time to create new precedents," Charles replied. "The monarchy must evolve to serve the needs of the people and the nation. If that requires us to think beyond traditional structures, so be it." The proposal was radical by royal standards, but it reflected the reality of what Kate and Camilla had already accomplished together. Rather than viewing the transition from one queen consort to another as a potential source of conflict, Charles was envisioning a model where experience and innovation could coexist. Word of Charles's deliberations began to spread through palace circles, creating excitement among some staff members and concern among others. The established order was being challenged in ways that many had never imagined possible. But for Kate and Camilla, the institutional discussions were secondary to the personal bond they had developed. They had discovered that they genuinely enjoyed each other's company, respected each other's perspectives, and shared a deep commitment to using their positions to make a positive difference in the world. The transformation reached its culmination during the annual state opening of Parliament. For the first time in decades, the ceremony featured a visible display of unity between the royal women that captured the attention of the entire nation. As Charles delivered the Queen's speech, cameras occasionally panned to show Kate and Camilla seated together, their body language relaxed and supportive. When the ceremony concluded, they walked side by side through the corridors of Westminster, engaged in animated conversation that suggested genuine friendship rather than obligatory protocol. The image that dominated newspaper front pages the following day showed the two women sharing a quiet laugh as they waited for their car, a moment of spontaneous joy that perfectly captured the evolution of their relationship. But the real test came when Charles made his announcement. During a televised address to the nation, he outlined his vision for the future of the monarchy, including his decision to formalize the partnership between Kate and Camilla through a new constitutional arrangement. "The challenges facing our nation and our Commonwealth require leadership that combines experience with innovation, tradition with progress," Charles said, looking directly into the camera. "I have witnessed firsthand how collaboration between different generations and perspectives can strengthen our institutions rather than divide them. The announcement created intense debate among constitutional scholars, political commentators, and the general public. Some praised Charles for modernizing an ancient institution, while others questioned whether such changes were necessary or wise. But public opinion polls revealed something remarkable. The majority of citizens supported the new arrangement, with many expressing admiration for how Kate and Camilla had handled their relationship with grace and maturity. Their joint charitable work had already demonstrated the benefits of their partnership, and people were eager to see what they might accomplish with greater official recognition. For Camilla, the announcement represented a form of vindication she had never expected. Rather than being gradually pushed aside as Charles aged and William's time approached, she was being asked to help mentor the next generation of royal leadership. Her years of experience and hard-won wisdom would continue to serve the monarchy she had devoted her life to supporting. Kate felt both honored and humbled by the trust being placed in her. The new arrangement would give her unprecedented authority and responsibility, but it also connected her more deeply to the institution's history and traditions through her relationship with Camilla. The first major test of their formalized partnership came during a state visit from the President of France. International protocol had to be carefully adjusted to accommodate the new structure, but the visit proceeded flawlessly. Foreign diplomats were impressed by the seamless coordination between the two women and the obvious mutual respect they demonstrated. As winter approached, Kate received the news she had been hoping for. Her latest medical tests showed no signs of cancer, and her doctors officially declared her to be in remission. The relief and joy throughout the royal family were overwhelming, but perhaps no one was more emotional than Camilla. During a private celebration dinner, Camilla raised her glass to toast Kate's recovery. "To the future," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "and to the friendship that has enriched all our lives." Charles watched the two women embrace and felt a deep satisfaction that went beyond political or institutional considerations. He had witnessed something rare and precious: the transformation of potential rivalry into genuine partnership. The changes they had initiated would outlast his own reign and provide a foundation for William and Kate's future rule. More importantly, they had proven that the monarchy could adapt and evolve while maintaining its essential character and purpose. As the evening drew to a close, Kate and Camilla stood together on the terrace overlooking the palace gardens, discussing plans for their next joint initiative. The lights of London sparkled in the distance, and both women felt a sense of accomplishment that had nothing to do with titles or protocols. They had chosen connection over competition, collaboration over conflict, and in doing so had changed not just their own lives but the very nature of the institution they served. The future of the monarchy looked brighter because two remarkable women had decided to write a different story than the one that had been expected of them.